So now I'd like to welcome Brian Sheridan, Development Director at the Coalition for Clean Air, the organization behind California Clean Air Day. Brian is here to tell us today about California Clean Air Day happening on October 7th.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for having me. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I am thrilled to be here. I want to thank the Sandag iCommute team who not only have invited me to talk at this webinar, but have been participating on our regional working group, which is great. But for those of you who don't know, California Clean Air Day is now going into our third year. And, I'm going to go back one. It's been a really great ride, and every year it gets a little bigger. It's what you see in this picture is the Los Angeles Kings partnered up with a local nonprofit group to do a tree planting in a disadvantaged community in South Los Angeles. And while volunteer events and other types of events will look very different in 2020, one of the really cool things about Clean Air Day is we can build community in a socially distant way. But there's some really good reasons why we have California Clean Air Day. I know for many of you, it may be a surprise, but San Diego actually has the 6th worst ozone in the entire country. And that San Diego's not alone. And even when there's not wildfires going on, and there's a wildfire in my backyard here in the San Gabriel Valley, and I know there's one to the east of San Diego, even when there's not these massive wildfires, we do have some real air pollution challenges. But the cool thing is that when we all work together, we can actually make a remarkable impact. But as this slide indicates, 7 of the top 10 cities for the worst air pollution in the country are here in California. And that has some real consequences. It leads to 1 million preventable school-based absences. And, Californians are 4 times as likely to suffer from health effects due to air pollution. But this is not about bumming all of you out about it. It's about the good news about we can do something about it. And so, we will go into our 3rd annual California Clean Air Day. And for the 15% of you that I saw in the poll had participated, thank you so much for that. We hope to continuously expand and, come together again to celebrate. And, in the past couple of years, it's been a real great opportunity to engage, and I'll talk about some of the ways that you can do that with your employees, but it's also a really good public-facing way to make big announcements or to highlight things that you're working on. Looking at a couple of the examples here, on the left, a couple of nonprofit groups had done a, Thank a Transit Rider program where they gave out tap cards, which, by the way, doesn't happen often enough as a transit rider myself. To Mayor Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles, unveiling the first zero-emission crane, to this adorable program at an elementary school in Sacramento, to Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf using this as an opportunity to highlight investments in bike lanes with a bike ride. So lots of different ways. That's just a small subset of what happens on the more public-facing end. But it all centers around a pledge. And so, there's an interplay that we'll talk about in a second between an individual pledge and an organizational pledge. From the individual standpoint, what we try to do is get people to go to the website and commit to super low barrier to entry activities that we think they are likely to take action on. And what we found is that when people go to our website and they actually click on each of the buttons and say, oh, I can do, I can, bike to the store on one day instead of driving to the store, or I can plant a tree, or whatever choice they may take, that when they do that 97% of them said they actually fulfilled their obligations. So it's a really powerful way of getting people to act. And so there's 3 broad categories with a couple of different thoughts in mind. We ask people to plant something. reduce vehicle emissions, and to switch things out. So in that last category, now is a really apt time, right? So a lot of people think it's really hard to clean your air filter in your home, or they don't even think about it. So here we've given them an opportunity to say, hey, have you thought about this? Did you know your car has a cabin air filter that actually, when it's properly maintained, can reduce emissions coming into the vehicle by 90% in terms of particulate matter? But really the way that we get to our big numbers in terms of participation is through all of you. We had 316 companies companies, nonprofits, government agencies participate last year. We're already exceeded that. And there are a number of ways our organizational partners sign up or commit to actions. One is by engaging their employees, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But another one is to change their business practices. So, for a lot of companies, believe it or not, they don't have a sustainability plan. So, they can commit to a sustainability plan, or they don't have electric vehicle chargers, they can commit to that. They can also commit to doing things externally, and we'll show some examples of that as well. But the cool thing about Clean Air Day is that we do not completely try to control the message. So we recognize that every organization contributes to air pollution and can do something about it. And so we ask you if you'd like to, tell us what else you're going to do. When you go to the forum, you have some suggestions. Tell us what else you're going to do for Clean Air Day. Every solution is welcome. And by taking this approach, we've been able to reach a whole lot of folks. Last year, we estimate 650,000 people across the state took action for Clean Air Day. It's obvious it's up quite a bit from our first year proof of concept. And everything today, as I'm sure all of you are aware, revolves around social media. So we had 950,000 social media impressions. The official hashtag is Clean Air Day CA, and the accidental one is Clean Air Day, which is fine. But of course, we recognize the importance of our local elected officials in making this a success. And so last year we had 51 mayors take part in a mayor's council. This year we have a city leaders challenge, and people are signing up. I think for our folks at Sandag, this probably has a special importance. And then our statewide agencies got involved. So you may have noticed as you were driving last year that 8.74 million, you may have seen the Caltrans signs that encouraged you to basically get out of your car. And we don't just do this because it's a feel-good exercise as a feel-good exercise. It's really, we want action. And so we had 1.25 million actions taken to clear the air. And in San Diego, where transit was free last year, unfortunately they can't commit this year, they had 100,000 extra transit riders. And 90 events took place across the state. And as I mentioned, a whole lot of companies and agencies took part. But when you go to cleanairday.org, and if you're not there already, feel free to do so, you're going to see a really big blue button that says Take the Pledge. That's where everything sort of starts. And when you do that, you come to this page. And for most of you, you are going to want to focus on the thing to the right. Although I would point out that the Kids Pledge is a new thing this year that we added after some feedback from teachers and others. But for the majority of you on this call, you're going to start with the organizational pledge. And it's going to ask you some prescriptive things about, how many employees do you have? How many people do you think you can engage? Don't worry, it's not a test. We're not going to hold you to anything. It's really for our understanding. But the one thing I do want everybody to pay attention to when they're on that page is at the bottom, it's going to ask you for a pledge link, and you can see it right here. And what you're looking at is the back end. So once you sign up, you actually have access to log in at any time. It's going to ask you what you'd like for your password, all that standard stuff. But this pledge link right here is something that you will want to share with your employees or stakeholders or customers, depending on how you want to use that. And so using the Coalition for Clean Air as an example, if I wanted to share this with my colleagues, and I said, hey, everybody, I'm thrilled that I've signed us up for Clean Air Day. Please click on this link and join me in taking personal actions. I'm going to want that to say something, that this little URL here, CCA, so that if they share it out, it makes sense. And for example, if I owned, Marty's Donuts, I'd want to choose for my URL probably Marty's Donuts. And I mention all of this because I think a lot of people miss it, and it's an important way. It's just an additional branding as well for all of you. And so as I think about outreach to my employees, I think about what it is that my company does and how that might look. For a lot of us, maybe some of you can relate on this webinar, we get a lot of messages that are very press release, that are very informational, but not often enough do we get something that invites us to join our employer in taking action. And so I use this as an example to say, if you're already invested in air pollution your reductions, here's something that you might consider sending out. Dear Brian, as you know, and I'll say SDG&E, for example. As you know, SDG&E is a huge part of the climate and clean air solution in California. That's why we've invested heavily in electrification of our transportation infrastructure. We also know that we can all do more, and that's why we're inviting all of you to join us in taking the Clean Air Pledge. Click here and take action. And that's a great way, especially if to reach those employees that this is not in their wheelhouse. They have nothing to do with it, but that for them, this low barrier to action, it's like, oh, okay, I think I can do that. And you don't have to be in the business of climate or air quality. If you have nothing to do with it, that's great too. If you make pens, we love people who make pens. And so I would broaden that message to say, believe it or not, San Diego has the 6th worst air quality in the nation. That's why we've signed the Clean Air Pledge and why we're encouraging all of you to join us. So it's still in that same vein, but you can sort of broaden it a little bit. And you can sort of mention some of the things as you see in the next chapter, paragraph, from changing your air filter in your home to planting a tree to biking. There are things that all of us can do. And so when you guys do this, I'm really thrilled to say that I can give you back some really valuable, I hope, information that you can use in your planning. So using Southern California Gas Company as an example, last year they really pushed their employees to sign up. And when they did, they got a report back as such. In this example, 732 employees took the pledge. The majority pledged to reduce vehicle emissions, but most people did all 3 categories. And so that's your broad snapshot. But as they got a little bit more granular, you can see that in this case, a lot of folks at SoCalGas were really interested in, when they thought about it, they're like, oh, I can bring a home indoor plant into the office. And so if I'm in charge of CSR or volunteerism or employee engagement, I might think about, okay, how do I use this? Maybe the next time I do a volunteer outing, I say, okay, everybody who comes gets a house plant or something. There are lots of ways to, of course, interpret this data. And that includes, a lot of information on reducing vehicle emissions. I know that telecommuting is a little bit tongue-in-cheek this year, but of course we can continue telecommuting into ways that people hadn't thought about as well. And again, this category, I think it's important, we switched the pledge up on the individual side so that people would see this category first, because we think it's so important given what's going on with COVID and other things, that people are aware of ways to protect their health. But again, you can see in this example, a lot of people challenged themselves, committed themselves to change their air filter, which is really important because I think for a lot of people, they think they have to have some sort of special skill to do that. And we try to give you guys a little demographic information when you do this as well. And this is particularly valuable, I think, if you're doing something on the external engagement. But in SoCalGas's example, you had a lot of, obviously, people from Los Angeles. And as I mentioned, you can get creative in the ways that you engage. Lime was our #1 participant in terms of external engagement. And so what they did is they gave folks the opportunity to unlock free Lime rides if they use the code that we gave them. And, and so they got back this report as well. But, you can use it with your customers, whoever you may have. It's your tool to use. And we're just thrilled to have people engaged and joining us in this effort. And of course, California Clean Air Day would not be made possible if it weren't for our generous sponsors, so I have to mention that, as well as other funders who have provided information. But again, please take a look at the website at cleanairday.org. We have, in our efforts of increasing inclusivity and diversity, we've added Spanish sections. We've added, we will soon be adding a Chinese section as well. And then we wanted to make it as easy as possible for you. So you'll notice that there are a number of resource pages, and my information will be up at the end if you have any questions. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brian. I know we're all really looking forward to putting some of the ideas to work on Clean Air Day. So let's do